Right now, somewhere in the world, a cancer diagnosis is being delivered. Not once an hour, not every few minutes. Roughly every 18 seconds, a person receives that news for the first time. And here is the number that changes everything. Researchers now estimate that approximately 40% of all cancer cases are linked not to your genes, not to your age, but to modifiable lifestyle and dietary factors. Choices you are making every single day. That means the food on your plate is either creating an environment inside your body where cancer cannot get a foothold, or it is quietly handing cancer cells everything they need to grow. In this video, I am going to show you 4 specific foods that the scientific literature has identified as capable of disrupting cancer cell survival at the molecular level, interfering with the signals tumors depend on, turning off the switches that protect cancer from dying, and amplifying your immune system's ability to hunt down abnormal cells before they take hold. And then, I am going to show you exactly what most people are eating instead. The 4 dietary patterns that are actively feeding cancer growth in ways most people would never recognize. Most people believe cancer is something that simply happens to you, a roll of the genetic dice, and I understand why that belief feels comforting. If cancer is destiny, then there is nothing you could have done differently. But that is not what the science says. What decades of peer-reviewed research, published in journals like Nature Medicine, The Lancet Oncology, and Clinical Cancer Research has shown is something far more empowering and far more uncomfortable for the conventional medical model to fully embrace. I'm Dr. Elowen Fairley, and you're watching Dr. Elowen Fairley. If you want health information explained in plain language, with no drama and no sugarcoating, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. The foods you eat do not simply fuel your cells. They send molecular instructions to them. Specific compounds in specific foods can tell tumors to stop growing. They can signal your immune system to identify and eliminate abnormal cells with greater precision. They can literally switch off the genetic pathways that allow cancer to survive and spread. This is not fringe science. This is peer-reviewed research, and almost nobody is explaining it in a way that translates to your actual kitchen. That changes today. Let me show you exactly what the evidence says, and exactly what to do with it. Before we get to the 4 foods, you need to understand something about how cancer actually works, because it changes everything about why food matters at the molecular level. At any given moment, your immune system is identifying and neutralizing hundreds, possibly thousands, of abnormal cells every single day. Think of it as a building security team that patrols every corridor, every floor, around the clock. When they find a cell that is mutating, replicating chaotically, or behaving in ways that threaten surrounding tissue, they neutralize it before it can cause real damage. This happens constantly. It is happening in your body right now as you watch this. The reason most of us do not develop cancer is not because we have never had abnormal cells. We all have them. The reason is that our immune defenses, combined with each cell's own internal error correction systems, catch and eliminate them before they can establish themselves. But cancer cells are not passive. Over decades of research, scientists have discovered that tumors do not simply grow unchecked. They actively manipulate their environment. They secrete chemical signals that instruct the immune system to stand down. They hijack the body's own blood vessel construction machinery to build a private food delivery network. They alter the expression of genes in nearby healthy cells, forcing the local environment to become more hospitable to tumor growth. This is why cancer is not simply about having a harmful gene. It is about whether the conditions in your body allow abnormal cells to gain the upper hand. And this is precisely where food becomes so significant. The same chemical signals that cancer relies on to survive, many of them can be blocked, disrupted, or deactivated by specific molecular compounds found in common foods. Let me show you exactly which ones and exactly how they work. One of the most important things to understand about cancer is that it rarely appears overnight. For most cancers, the journey from the first abnormal cell mutation to a detectable tumor takes years, sometimes decades. And during that entire window, the molecular environment inside your body is either helping contain those abnormal cells or quietly enabling their progression. There are 3 biological systems that cancer exploits to grow and survive. The first is chronic low-grade inflammation. Inflammatory signaling creates a chemical environment that encourages abnormal cells to multiply and discourages immune surveillance. The second is angiogenesis, the growth of new blood vessels that feed tumors. Cancer cells recruit this process by secreting vascular endothelial growth factor, VEGF, essentially calling for their own private food supply. The third is the suppression of apoptosis, the cellular program that tells damaged or abnormal cells to self-destruct. Every healthy cell in your body is equipped with this built-in failsafe. Cancer cells learn to disable it, which is why they keep replicating when they should be dying. The most important insight from nutritional oncology is this: all 3 of these systems respond to what you eat. Specific dietary compounds can suppress inflammatory signaling, interfere with angiogenesis, and reactivate apoptosis in abnormal cells. This is the framework through which the 4 foods we are about to discuss have been scientifically studied. It is not magic, it is biochemistry, and it has been published in some of the most respected peer-reviewed journals in medicine. Understanding this framework is the reason today's information will actually make sense and actually stick. The first food is turmeric, and more specifically, a compound inside it called curcumin. Let me be direct about something immediately. Buying a turmeric latte and calling it cancer prevention is not what we are talking about. The research on turmeric's relationship to cancer biology is about a precise molecular mechanism, and it requires precise preparation to work. Cancer cells contain a molecular switch called NF-kappa B, nuclear factor kappa B. Think of it as the cancer cell's internal command center. When NF-kappa B is switched on, the cancer cell activates genes that protect it from dying, allow it to keep dividing, and enable it to spread into surrounding tissue. NF-kappa B is one of the most extensively studied pathways in all of cancer biology, and is constitutively overactive in many of the most treatment-resistant cancers, including pancreatic, breast, colorectal, and prostate. Curcumin has been shown across hundreds of laboratory and clinical studies to directly inhibit NF-kappa B activation. It essentially enters the cancer cell's command center and disables the circuit. But the mechanism goes further. Curcumin also reactivates apoptosis, the cell's built-in self-destruct program. Cancer cells disable apoptosis to survive. Curcumin turns it back on. The MD Anderson Cancer Center conducted a phase 2 clinical trial of oral curcumin in patients with advanced pancreatic cancer, one of the most treatment-resistant cancers in existence. Among 21 evaluable patients, NF-kappa B downregulation was documented in peripheral blood cells. One patient experienced tumor regression of 73%. One patient had stable disease for more than 18 months. No treatment-related toxicities were observed. For a disease where most interventions show near zero response rates, these findings were considered scientifically significant. Now, here is the preparation rule that determines whether any of this translates to your body. Curcumin consumed without black pepper is very poorly absorbed. Combining it with piperine, the active compound in black pepper, increases curcumin bioavailability in humans by up to 2,000%. That figure is from a peer-reviewed pharmacokinetic study published in Planta Medica. Curcumin is also fat-soluble, meaning consuming it with a small amount of olive oil, coconut milk, or another healthy fat significantly increases how much your body can actually absorb and use. The research-supported approach: 1 level teaspoon of ground turmeric with 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper consumed with a fat-containing meal every day. The fat and the pepper are not optional. They are the mechanism. Let's go deeper into what curcumin is doing inside a cancer cell, because understanding the mechanism is what separates education from guesswork. Every healthy cell in your body carries an internal instruction set that tells it when to divide, when to stop dividing, and when to die. The final instruction, when to die, is carried out through apoptosis, the programmed cell death pathway. When a cell's DNA is too damaged to repair, apoptosis is supposed to trigger, eliminating the cell before it can become a threat. Cancer cells have evolved to disable this pathway, which is why they keep replicating long after they should have destroyed themselves. Curcumin intervenes at multiple points along this pathway. It reactivates the apoptotic signaling cascade in cancer cells, while leaving healthy cells largely undisturbed. This selective action, disrupting cancer cell survival without significant harm to surrounding normal tissue, is one of the reasons curcumin has attracted so much scientific attention. Laboratory studies have demonstrated this effect in breast, colon, pancreatic, prostate, and liver cancer cell lines. Curcumin also interferes with angiogenesis. The MD Anderson trial documented that curcumin treatment was associated with reduced expression of vascular endothelial growth factor, VEGF, the chemical signal cancer cells use to recruit new blood vessel growth. Without new blood vessels, a tumor cannot build the private nutrient supply it needs to grow beyond a microscopic size. By suppressing VEGF signaling, curcumin targets one of the most fundamental requirements of tumor growth. The combined picture, NF-kappa B inhibition, apoptosis reactivation, and VEGF suppression, places curcumin among the most comprehensively studied dietary compounds in cancer biology. It does not work in isolation. It works best as part of a consistent daily dietary approach. This is the difference between a curious experiment and a long-term strategy. Garlic has been used medicinally for more than 5,000 years. For most of that history, nobody could explain why it worked at the molecular level. Now, with precision biochemistry, we can. When you crush or chop a garlic clove, you physically break open cells and trigger an enzymatic reaction. The enzyme alanase converts alanine, a sulfur-containing amino acid stored in garlic cells, into allicin. Allicin is unstable and rapidly converts into a family of sulfur compounds that are responsible for garlic's distinctive smell and its biological activity. Among the most researched of these compounds is diallyl disulfide, or DADS. Here is what makes DADS significant in cancer biology. In laboratory studies, DADS and related garlic compounds have demonstrated the ability to act on histone deacetylase, HDAC enzymes, the molecular machinery that cancer cells use to compress and silence the genes responsible for triggering cell death. By inhibiting HDAC, garlic compounds may help unsilence those death signal genes, creating conditions in which cancer cells that had disabled their own self-destruct mechanisms become more susceptible to apoptosis. This research is primarily preclinical, but it represents a compelling mechanistic basis for garlic's observed associations with cancer risk reduction in epidemiological studies. Second, garlic compounds stimulate the liver's production of phase 2 detoxification enzymes, including glutathione S-transferase. These enzymes act as a molecular interception system, neutralizing carcinogenic compounds before they can reach your cell's DNA. Think of it as a chemical checkpoint that catches cancer-causing agents before they cause damage. The Iowa Women's Health Study, a large prospective study following more than 41,000 women, found a strong association between garlic consumption and significantly reduced risk of distal colon cancer in women with the highest garlic intake compared to those with the lowest. The National Cancer Institute cites this study and several others, including the European Prospective Investigation into Cancer and Nutrition, EPIC, and multiple Chinese population studies as evidence supporting an association between garlic consumption and reduced risk of gastric, esophageal, colon, and prostate cancers. Here is the critical preparation rule. Crush or finely chop your garlic and let it rest for a full 10 minutes before applying heat. This waiting window allows the enzymatic reaction creating allicin to fully complete. Applying heat immediately after crushing destroys the allinase enzyme before the reaction finishes, dramatically reducing the bioactive compounds available. Crush first, then cook. Let me be direct with you about something that most health conversations avoid. The research on cancer-protective dietary compounds is not a story about quick fixes. The biological systems we are discussing, inflammatory signaling, immune surveillance, apoptotic pathway function, angiogenic signaling, all operate on long timescales. The conditions inside your body right now are the result of years of accumulated dietary choices. And the protective conditions you are building with these 4 foods will take months and years to fully establish. This matters enormously for one specific reason. The window during which dietary intervention is most effective is not after a cancer diagnosis, it is before one. In the period during which abnormal cells are emerging, mutating, and probing their environment to find the conditions that allow them to survive. This is when a dietary environment that is actively hostile to cancer cell survival is most protective. The research on curcumin, garlic compounds, flaxseed lignans, and mushroom beta-glucans consistently points to the same conclusion. These compounds do not eliminate cancer that has already established deep roots. They work by disrupting the molecular conditions that allow abnormal cells to gain the upper hand in the first place. They suppress the inflammation that feeds early tumor formation. They amplify immune surveillance so that abnormal cells are identified and neutralized before they can consolidate. Every day that you delay building these dietary patterns is a day in which the internal conditions go unmodified. That is the critical window, not a 72-hour emergency countdown, but a long, quiet window that is open right now, and that narrows with every decade that passes without attention to these factors. The third food is ground flaxseed. It is small, plain, and visually unimpressive. But the research on its cancer-protective properties, particularly for hormone-dependent cancers, is among the most compelling evidence in nutritional oncology. Flax seeds contain the highest concentration of lignans of any food studied. Lignans are polyphenolic compounds that interact with the body's hormonal signaling system in a very specific way. The primary lignin in flaxseed is secoisolaracinol diglucoside, or SDG. When SDG enters your digestive system and reaches the colon, gut bacteria convert it into 2 mammalian lignans, enterolactone and enterodiol. These compounds are structurally similar to estrogen. They bind to estrogen receptor sites on cells, including cells in hormone-sensitive tissues, but unlike estrogen itself, they do not deliver the growth-promoting signals that hormone-sensitive cancer cells exploit. They occupy the receptor and block access to it without triggering downstream proliferative effects. This competitive binding mechanism is particularly relevant to breast and prostate cancers, which are often driven by estrogen or testosterone signaling. In human clinical research, dietary flaxseed given preoperatively to newly diagnosed breast cancer patients was shown to measurably reduce Ki-67 values, a direct laboratory marker of cancer cell proliferation rate, and increase rates of apoptosis within actual tumor tissue, compared to a control group. These were not cell line studies or animal models. These were measurable cellular changes inside patient tumors, confirmed on pathology analysis after tumor removal. Additionally, flaxseed is one of the richest plant sources of alpha-linolenic acid, an omega-3 fatty acid that suppresses cyclooxygenase 2, an inflammatory enzyme that cancer cells exploit to make surrounding tissue more hospitable. The preparation rule is non-negotiable. Ground flaxseed, not whole. The outer hull of a whole flaxseed is largely indigestible. The lignans pass straight through your body unused. Grind them fresh in a small coffee grinder, or buy pre-ground and store refrigerated in an airtight container. Ground flaxseed oxidizes quickly once exposed to air. 2 tablespoons of freshly ground flaxseed daily, approximately 14 grams, added to oatmeal, a smoothie, or yogurt. Consistency across weeks and months is what drives the gut bacterial conversion into the active protective compounds. There is a concept in cancer biology that most people never hear about, but that changes how you think about prevention entirely: the tumor microenvironment. Cancer cells do not operate in isolation. They actively reshape the tissue around them, creating a local environment that suppresses immune activity, promotes angiogenesis, and shifts the chemical balance of the surrounding cells in their favor. This microenvironment is not fixed, it is dynamic, and it responds to systemic factors, including inflammation levels, hormonal signaling, immune activation, and the gut microbiome. Here is why this matters. The 4 foods we are discussing today do not just act on cancer cells directly. They act on the microenvironment that cancer cells depend on. Curcumin suppresses the inflammatory signaling that makes tissue hospitable to tumor development. Garlic compounds activate liver detoxification enzymes that intercept carcinogens before they reach DNA. Flaxseed lignans modulate hormonal signaling throughout the body, reducing the estrogenic fuel that hormone-sensitive tumors require. Mushroom beta-glucans amplify immune surveillance so that the security team patrolling your tissues is better equipped to identify and eliminate abnormal cells before they establish. Your gut microbiome plays a central role in several of these mechanisms. The bacterial populations in your colon determine whether flaxseed lignans are converted into their active protective forms. They influence systemic inflammatory levels. They modulate immune activity throughout the body. A microbiome depleted by antibiotic use, a low-fiber diet, or heavy processed food consumption cannot perform these conversions at full efficiency. This is why pairing these 4 foods with fermented foods, yogurt, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, amplifies their protective impact. You are not just feeding yourself, you are cultivating the bacterial workforce that activates many of these compounds. The 4th food is medicinal mushrooms, specifically shiitake, maitake, and reishi. And here is something that reframes how you think about them. Mushrooms are not plants. Genetically, they are more closely related to animals than to vegetables. And the compounds in medicinal mushrooms interact with the human immune system in ways that have no direct equivalent anywhere in the plant kingdom. The primary anti-cancer compounds in these mushrooms are beta-glucans, complex polysaccharides found in the fungal cell wall. Beta-glucans are biological response modifiers. They do not attack cancer cells directly. Instead, they modify your immune system's capability and alertness, essentially upgrading the quality and quantity of the security team responsible for finding and eliminating abnormal cells. Here is the specific mechanism. Beta-glucans bind to specialized receptors on immune cell surfaces, particularly Dectin-1 and complement receptor 3, CR3. This binding triggers a cascade of immune activation. Natural killer cells, the frontline soldiers of anti-cancer immunity, increase in both number and activity. Macrophages, cells that engulf and destroy abnormal material, elevate their responsibility. The body's cytokine production shifts toward an anti-tumor profile. In practical terms, your immune surveillance system receives a meaningful operational upgrade. What makes medicinal mushrooms particularly compelling is that they have been studied not just in laboratory settings, but in clinical oncology. Lentinan, a beta-glucan extract from shiitake mushrooms, has been investigated in multiple clinical trials. A systematic review of 38 trials involving over 3,100 patients found that intravenously administered Lentinan improved chemotherapy response rates, 56% versus 43% for chemotherapy alone, and quality of life in cancer patients. Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center's Integrative Medicine Database notes that several clinical trials show Lentinan combined with chemotherapy extends survival in patients with stomach, colorectal, and liver cancers. Reishi mushrooms additionally contain triterpene compounds that inhibit NF-kappa B through a complementary mechanism to curcumin, meaning when consumed together, these two foods suppress the same cancer survival switch from two different molecular directions simultaneously. Preparation. Unlike many plant compounds, beta-glucans become more bioavailable when mushrooms are cooked. For shiitake and maitake, a light sauté in olive oil or addition to soups is ideal. For reishi, too woody and bitter to eat whole, 1 gram of certified organic fruiting body extract, not mycelium on grain, which contains far lower beta-glucan content, stirred into tea or coffee daily. If today's information has made you want to take a more active role in monitoring your cancer risk, here are 3 specific clinical conversations worth having with your physician. Test 1. High sensitivity C-reactive protein, or hsCRP. This blood test measures systemic low-grade inflammation, one of the most significant modifiable drivers of cancer risk and progression. Standard CRP tests measure acute inflammation. The high-sensitivity version detects the chronic low-level inflammatory state that often goes undetected for years, but creates conditions favorable to tumor development. An hsCRP level below 1.0 milligrams per liter is generally considered low risk. Levels above 3.0 milligrams per liter suggest elevated chronic inflammation worth addressing. Ask your doctor specifically for the high-sensitivity version. Test 2. Fasting insulin and HOMA-IR, or insulin resistance index. Chronically elevated insulin, often caused by diets high in refined carbohydrates and processed foods, activates growth-promoting signaling pathways that cancer cells exploit. Insulin-like growth factor 1, IGF-1, is directly stimulated by elevated insulin levels, and IGF-1 is one of the most studied drivers of cancer cell proliferation. A fasting insulin test combined with fasting glucose to calculate HOMA-IR gives a precise picture of your insulin sensitivity. Many people with normal fasting blood sugar still have significantly elevated insulin. Ask your doctor to run both. Test 3. Stool DNA test, Cologuard, or colonoscopy for colorectal cancer screening. Early detection remains the single most powerful tool in cancer outcomes. For colorectal cancer, one of the most preventable and treatable cancers when caught early, a stool DNA test is a non-invasive option available to most adults over 45. If you have risk factors, family history, inflammatory bowel disease, prior polyps, a colonoscopy may be more appropriate. Do not delay colorectal screening. Early-stage colorectal cancer has a survival rate exceeding 90%. Late-stage colorectal cancer does not. When speaking with your doctor, say clearly, "I would like to discuss my cancer risk and specifically request high-sensitivity CRP, fasting insulin with HOMA-IR, and age-appropriate colorectal cancer screening." Let me give you the exact framework that translates all of this research into what you actually do every day. Turmeric. 1 level teaspoon of ground turmeric with 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, consumed with a fat-containing meal every day. The fat and pepper are the mechanism, not optional additions. Golden milk made with full-fat coconut milk. Turmeric stirred into scrambled eggs, cooked in olive oil. Turmeric added to lentil soup with a drizzle of olive oil before serving. The fat and the pepper are what make curcumin absorbable. Garlic. 2 to 4 freshly crushed or finely chopped cloves daily. Crush or chop. Wait 10 minutes, then cook or consume. Add to stir fries near the end of cooking to preserve more compounds. Blend raw into hummus or salad dressings. Mix into olive oil and drizzle over finished dishes. Jarred pre-minced garlic stored in acid contains negligible allicin and should not be relied upon for this purpose. Ground flaxseed, 2 tablespoons daily, approximately 14 grams. Stir into morning oatmeal or yogurt. Blend into a smoothie. Sprinkle over a salad before adding dressing. Ground fresh is best. Pre-ground, stored in an airtight container in the refrigerator, is a reliable alternative. Whole flax seeds are not a substitute for this purpose. Medicinal mushrooms. 1 to 2 cups of cooked shiitake or maitake mushrooms 4 to 5 times per week. Add to soups, stir-fries, or sauté in olive oil with garlic, which simultaneously delivers food number 2. For reishi, 1 gram of organic fruiting body extract stirred into tea or black coffee daily. The 4 mistakes to avoid: substituting supplements for whole foods, being inconsistent and expecting rapid results, skipping preparation rules, and adding protective foods without also reducing the foods that actively feed inflammation: processed meats, refined sugars, industrial seed oils, and ultra-processed snack foods. You cannot fortify one wall of a structure that has no foundation. The full picture matters. The relationship between age and cancer risk is not simply that older people get cancer more often. It is that the cellular machinery responsible for containing abnormal cells becomes less efficient over time, and that decades of cumulative dietary choices compound in both directions. In your 30s, the immune surveillance system is typically operating near peak efficiency. Natural killer cell activity is robust. Inflammatory regulation is generally effective. The window for establishing protective dietary patterns is widest at this stage, not because the threat is imminent, but because the protective benefit of consistent habits compounds over the longest time horizon. In your 40s, the first measurable declines in immune efficiency begin. DNA repair mechanisms slow slightly. Hormonal changes, particularly the perimenopausal shift in estrogen balance in women, alter the hormonal microenvironment in ways that affect hormone-sensitive cancer risk. This is the decade in which flaxseed lignan's estrogen receptor competitive binding becomes particularly relevant. It is also the decade in which chronic inflammation, if unchecked, has had enough time to do meaningful cumulative damage to cellular architecture. In your 50s and 60s, immune surveillance is detectably less efficient, and the accumulated effects of decades of dietary patterns become most visible in population-level cancer statistics. The same protective mechanisms remain active and responsive to dietary input at this stage, but the urgency of establishing them is greater, and the time required to build the protective cellular environment is not on your side. This does not mean it is too late. Research consistently shows that dietary improvements reduce cancer risk at any age. It means that starting now, regardless of your current decade, is the single most effective timing available to you. The key insight across all age groups is the same. Cancer protection through diet is not a short-term intervention. It is a consistent daily practice whose benefits accumulate over months and years. The body you are building today with these 4 foods is the cellular environment you will inhabit in 5, 10, and 20 years. Let me walk you through the specific research so you can see exactly what the evidence looks like and make your own informed judgment. At MD Anderson Cancer Center, researchers conducted a Phase 2 clinical trial of oral curcumin in patients with advanced pancreatic cancer, a disease with a 5-year survival rate below 12%, and very limited response to standard treatment. Among 21 evaluable patients receiving 8 grams of daily oral curcumin, NF-kappa B downregulation was documented in peripheral blood cells. One patient experienced a 73% tumor regression. One patient had stable disease for more than 18 months. No treatment-related toxicities were observed. The researchers concluded that oral curcumin has biological activity in some patients with pancreatic cancer. This is a small Phase 2 trial, not the final word, but it is peer-reviewed evidence published in Clinical Cancer Research. The Iowa Women's Health Study followed more than 41,000 women over multiple years, tracking dietary habits and cancer outcomes. The study found a strong association between garlic consumption and significantly reduced risk of distal colon cancer, with the highest garlic consumers showing the largest risk reduction. The National Cancer Institute cites this study as part of a broader body of evidence supporting an association between allium vegetable consumption and reduced cancer risk across multiple sites. In human clinical research at the University of Toronto, newly diagnosed breast cancer patients given 25 grams of ground flaxseed daily in a muffin compared to an identical placebo muffin for approximately 5 weeks before scheduled tumor surgery showed measurably reduced Ki-67, a direct laboratory marker of cancer cell proliferation, and higher rates of apoptosis within the actual tumor tissue on pathology analysis. These were cellular changes inside real patient tumors, confirmed in pathology. A systematic review examining 38 clinical trials involving more than 3,100 patients found that intravenously administered lentinin, the beta-glucan from shiitake mushrooms, improved overall chemotherapy response rates and quality of life in cancer patients. Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center's Integrative Medicine Database notes survival benefits in patients with gastric and hepatocellular cancers receiving lentinin alongside standard chemotherapy. The consistent message across all 4 lines of research: these are not miracle cures. They are biologically active dietary compounds with documented molecular mechanisms and peer-reviewed evidence of measurable effects in both laboratory settings and human studies. Used consistently and correctly, they contribute to a cellular environment less hospitable to cancer development. Here is what to carry away from today. Turmeric with black pepper and fat, 1 teaspoon daily with 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper and a healthy fat. Inhibits NF-kappa B, the cancer cell survival switch. Reactivates apoptosis, the cancer cell self-destruct mechanism. Never without the pepper and fat. Fresh garlic, 2 to 4 crushed cloves daily, rested 10 minutes before heat. Garlic compounds suppress molecular pathways that silence cancer cell death genes. Activates liver detoxification enzymes that intercept carcinogens before DNA damage occurs. Ground flaxseed, 2 tablespoons daily. Competes at estrogen receptor sites to disrupt hormone-dependent tumor signaling. Gut bacteria convert lignins into enterolactone, linked in multiple studies to reduced breast cancer risk markers. Medicinal mushrooms, 1 to 2 cups of cooked shiitake or maitake 4 to 5 times per week, plus 1 gram of reishi fruiting body extract daily. Beta-glucans activate natural killer cells and macrophages. Reishi triterpenes additionally suppress NF-kappa B through a parallel molecular pathway. Key synergies: turmeric with black pepper and fat, every time. Garlic and turmeric in the same meal when possible. They inhibit NF-kappa B through different mechanisms, creating additive pathway suppression. Flaxseed with fermented foods to support the gut bacterial conversion that makes lignins biologically active. 3-step action plan for this week. First, pick up turmeric, fresh black peppercorns, ground flaxseed, and either shiitake mushrooms or a reishi extract from any well-stocked grocery or health food store. Second, choose 1 meal per day where you will build in the turmeric-pepper-fat combination consistently. Consistency beats intensity every time. Third, book a conversation with your physician about high-sensitivity CRP and age-appropriate cancer screening. The information in this video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult a qualified healthcare professional before making changes to your diet or health routine. If you have any existing medical conditions or are undergoing cancer treatment, speak with your oncologist before adding any new dietary compounds. Cancer is not predetermined. The research is clear. The tools are real, and you have far more control over your internal cellular environment than most people are ever told. If this gave you information that could protect your health or someone you love, subscribe to Dr. Elowen Fairley. Share this video. It could genuinely make a difference to someone in your life. And leave a comment. Which of these 4 foods were you already using, and which one surprised you most?